What is up, Watch fam? Happy Wednesday, and welcome to this week's collection review. I'm Christian from Theo and Harris, and today we're going to be jumping into the watch collection of Mr. Bradley Pitt. All right, before we jump into today's review, quick wristwatch check. I am wearing a very cool Rolex reference 1601 with a lemon buckley dial. This is a beautiful watch. I've got it on a yellow gold presidential Rolex bracelet. I'm having a lot of fun with it. All right, now let's get into Brad Pitt's collection. You know his name is William? William Bradley Pitt. Will Pitt didn't sound cool though. He wouldn't be Brad Pitt if he was Will Pitt, you know? He'd probably be still living wherever the hell he's from. But Brad Pitt has quite a collection of watches. Not only money, but in style and taste. Damn, Brad. Let's get into it. All right, so the first watch we found of Brad's is a Patek Philippe, reference 5205 annual calendar in rose gold with a black dial. This is a very serious watch. I'm a big fan of the proportions of it. I love the moon phase. I love how the dial's broken up. I don't love how the day, date, and month are broken up, though. I gotta say, to me, it's a little bit off-putting, unfortunately. Other complications by Patek in the same kind of world of annual and perpetual have been executed so much better. 3940, for example, with 5035 is another one. So I'm not an enormous fan of this watch, but it does set the tone for his collection. You can take a very safe guess by looking at this 5205 that Brad Pitt cares about watches. We started off with a complicated Patek, you know, so it wasn't like we started off with a standard Rolex Submariner, which is a great watch, there's no doubt, but it doesn't scream the same message quite as clearly. Now let's get into the rest of his watches. Okay, this one is crazy. This is, you know, Brad owns, or at least has worn several times, a Grail watch of mine. I mean, like, I'm not even understanding. I mean, this is a watch that I would do a lot of things for. This is a crazy watch. It's a Cartier Tank à Guichet. It's a reissue of only, I think, 100 or 200 pieces made from an original Cartier jump hour watch. They're sometimes referred to as digital read watches. You'll find the hour, minute, and running second. I actually have one in my personal collection. I love it very much, just not made by Cartier. You know, what I love about this is just how it looks basically nothing like any other watch. The way that these jump hour watches express and tell time, although mechanically is the same, is just so distinct and visually different. It's something that I have seen and I know, but if you show this to, you know, lay people, just the average person, you know, the vast majority of the population, they're going to be like, what is that? I've never seen something like that before. But you can't say the same about other, even more desirable watches. You know, you look at a Patek Philippe reference 1518, or you look at a Rolex Mil Sub, and these are incredibly special and really Grail watches in and of their own right. But if you show them to normal people and everyday person, they're going to say, oh, that's just it looks very similar to something that I've seen 1,000 times before. And yeah, of course, they're wrong. They're more significant to history, or they're, you know, best timepieces in the world. They still are made with the same understanding of how a watch tells time. This is not, and I love that about it. When I wear my jump hour, heads turn, which is not the same. I can't say the same thing when I wear really most of the things. So props to Brad. You own a Grail of mine. Okay, jumping back into Patek Philippe, Brad has an Ellipse, I believe in white gold with a beautiful blue dial and an integrated bracelet. Another watch that I love, and I'm totally surprised to see in his collection. You know, when you look at Brad Pitt or you think about Brad Pitt, you know, you're not thinking about, you know, very 70s dress watches by Patek with their original integrated bracelets. You know, when you look at that guy, you're thinking he's going to wear something of heft. But the fact that he's worn this, at least allegedly, both in and outside of movies, shows that he enjoys watches so much that he's kind of broken down the barriers of what would be normally enjoyable by him. And I've done the same thing. I am less macho than Brad Pitt. I look more like someone who would wear a watch this isolating, there's no doubt. But jumping from Rolex GMTs and Submariners and all things like that into, you know, 30 millimeter Piagets obviously was an odd, you know, jump and design and appreciation shift for me. So I can't even imagine, you know, how funky that must have been for someone like Brad Pitt. So huge props, you know, to him. This looks nothing like anything I would have expected him to own. So damn, again, Brad, you're hitting home runs. All right, the next watch, another piece of, serious hot horology, is something that I absolutely would expect him to own. After seeing the 5205 Patek, the annual calendar, I could have guessed that this next thing was coming. A Lange Sohne Timezone. A very, very serious watch made by one of my favorite brands. They have so much merit behind their brand. They are not propped up by marketing in the slightest. So someone who appreciates watches, even if Lange isn't their style, will absolutely appreciate what goes into designing a Lange. I know the Lange Sohne Timezone isn't the watch that I'm about to talk about for a second, but Anna, please put the link in the description to the video that Lange released. It was one of the only videos they've released in my experience, and it was about the development of their Zeitwerk minute repeater. This is an amazing video that shows you just how seriously they take every element of a watch. For those of you who are not familiar with a minute repeater, the complication itself, and I won't get too far into it, just it chimes. So when you hit a button or when you slide a lever, the watch chimes off the time. And this video, which is a one-on-one with one of Lange's directors, goes into how he developed, or how he thought of and then proceeded to develop the precise sounds of the chimes themselves. As if it wasn't hard enough to make a watch chime the time, and chime the time and make it sound good. They took it a step further, and spent how much time and money and passion on making the perfect sounds. So I'm not surprised that someone like Brad Pitt, who loves watches this much, has fallen in love with Lange. And beyond that, just on size, it's a more substantial watch. This does make more sense on his wrist than the Ellipse, for example. So needless to say, I'm an enormous fan of this watch, and good for Brad for choosing it. And to complete his collection, comes back down to earth for a second and apparently collects quite a bit of Rolex watches, from Steel Explorers to Yellow Gold Yachtmasters and Daytonas. Judging by both the watches themselves, as well as the photos of him wearing them, they seem to be quite a while ago. But that's not to diss the watches at all. They're terrific watches. So props to Brad Pitt, props to Rolex for, at least as I feel it, getting Brad Pitt into watches. He's got an awesome collection. I'm super impressed. If I had to give a recommendation, I would say go with our pick from last week for best everyday watch under $20,000, the FP Journe Chronometre Bleu. Everything from the way it was imagined to the way it was executed is absolutely out of this world, and for the price point around $17,000, it is not cheap, but it really is valuable. I dove more into it on the episode, so if you are watching Mr. Pitt, go ahead and watch last week's episode of Best Everyday Watch. The FP Journe is something that I think you should really start seriously considering. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed my review of Mr. Brad Pitt's collection. And that's it.